Welcome to Josh's Green Garage. So today's videos will be a little bit different. I'm not going to be putting anything together or anything like that. But I hit kind of a small milestone for myself. I hit 580 subscribers. So I want to thank you, everybody who's subscribed to me so far. It means a lot. It's grown a lot in just a year and doing these kinds of videos. And I know it's not the most fun thing to watch or anything like that. I try to be informational and to show how things are done. It's not necessarily meant to be the most entertaining of videos out there. So, to make progress like this, it really does mean a lot. So, being it's 580, obviously, if you've been watching my videos, I had an X580. So that's what I'm going to make this video about. I don't have it anymore. Of course, you can see the 758 behind me, but I can still talk about the 580. I still know about it. I still have my opinions about it, stuff like that. So I have some notes here I wrote down, some pros, cons, stuff like that. I was actually emailing, currently, at the time this is being made, emailing a guy that was asking, my opinion about him and, what I think would be best for, his situation and his lawn and whatnot. And, I found myself, heavily talking up the 580 as opposed to, the 300 series or even some other, brands of tractor. So let's get into it. So first, I'm going to start out with the cons because I don't want to start with all good and then, leave you with the bad or anything like that. Like at the end of the day, bottom line up front, the 580, in my opinion, is a great tractor. Probably, I'd rate it a 9 out of 10. Just overall, it was really good. I only have a few gripes about it. And like I said, we'll get into those first. So I'll start out with the sleeve hitch. That is my biggest complaint and realistically my only real complaint in my opinion. I had a lot of high hopes for it when I was initially building it, setting it up. All the metal in it, is really heavy, compared to anything that you would find on like a 100 series or anything like that. Everything on those is really lightweight. So, seeing the, thick metal that hitch was made of, I had a lot of really high hopes. Even the lift bar on it was heavy duty, it seemed. So I really thought it was going to be good stuff. And then I started doing some videos with it. I did the video where I wanted to see how much it could lift. So I just put a piece of steel, behind the mount on it and then hung some weights on it. I think I put 4 weights on it. Which is quite a bit. That's I think 168 pounds. So that's a good amount. And it lifted it, but not as well as I thought it would. I really thought, it would have been able to easily lift that and actuate it multiple times up and down. But it seemed like it was wanting to kind of twist and bend the hitch a little bit. It's not the most solid of a contact. It only really has like 3 contact points to where it hitches to. And only one of them is actually a solid secure connection. It literally just hooks around 2 pins on the bottom and then there's that bolt in the hitch itself. So not the most sturdy design in the world. Now you can get work done with it, I will say that. So I completely redid my driveway with it. I ripped it up with the ripper tool that I built and then using the sleeve hitch box blade, all by Brinley. Which isn't a bad tool. It's just not something like what you're gonna find on a bigger tractor. It's not a 3-point implement. It doesn't have the weight of a 3-point implement. So you can get stuff done. I managed to grade out my driveway the way I wanted to. I filled a very big dip in it. I was actually really impressed with what it could do. Now in the long run though, I don't know that sleeve hitch, that box blade is gonna hold up if you mean to do any serious work. Now, if you have, say you're in the South, like, I came up here to Alaska from Florida and a lot of driveways there, the driveway I had there, half of it wasn't concrete or anything. It was just kind of, packed sand, you drive over it a number of times, it gets packed down. but it was essentially just compacted sand. So if that eventually starts to get little potholes, whatever in it, and you're wanting to just kind of level that out and grade that every once in a while, or example, my father-in-law, he lived kind of like on the top of a hill, and whenever rain would come through, it would wash out a portion of the road. Now, granted, to the extent that he had, you'd probably want something a little more substantial, not just a 580 with a box blade. But if you had a little bit of road washout and you were wanting to try to fill it in, if it wasn't too bad, you could do that. You'd be fine. But it just got to the point to where, like, to really do anything with that box blade and anything super compacted, you need to have weight on it. And I managed to hang an extra suitcase weight on it, and it had a hard time lifting at that point. The weight was so far back, that you get into physics and all that, but it had a really hard time lifting that repeatedly. It would start out okay, but eventually, like, it could not lift it like you would expect. So I kind of lost my hopes, for that sleeve hitch, after quite a bit of use, though I did get some good use out of it. So I think it's less a problem with the 580 itself, more a problem with the sleeve hitch. I think if it was designed better, it might have been all right. So I'm going to leave it there with the sleeve hitch. We'll move on a little bit. So next, I'm going to talk about weight, and this is a pro and a con depending on which way you look at it. I'm going to talk about it first as a con, and I'm going to put it this way. The X580, which most people may know, the current X500 series is essentially an X300 series with some heavier duty parts on it. So I'm going to call it a beefed up X300. What I think it should have been is a watered down X700. Now, obviously you would think, okay, that's going to be about the same thing, but not necessarily. So there are some parts that I like about it. The transaxle on it was great. What else? The engine on it was great. Those two things specifically, I feel like if they put on an X700 platform, would have been a little bit better. So the older tractors before the X700 series, you had the X4 and the X500s. They were the X475, 85, and 95, and then the X575, 585, and 595. They are essentially the predecessor to what's now the X700. So those ones were a completely different animal. They had the frame similar to the X700 series, so they were built a lot beefier. I wish for the current X500s though, I really wish they would have taken the X700 frame, and then if anything, took out the big K90, 91, 92, whatever axle, and put the K72 on it. So you still have all the strength, rigidity, the weight of the 700 series, but you wouldn't be paying quite so much for the heavy duty transaxle. Now I get it, you're gonna have less capacity for hydraulics and whatnot there, but you're still gonna have a lot more than what you would have with this, which is more so like an X300 frame. So with that, the engine in the 700s, they're a horizontal drive shaft, and then they're shaft driven. So you don't have a belt going back to the transaxle. And then the engines are liquid cooled, everything like that. I'm gonna get more into that when I get to pros of the 580, but essentially, take the X700, just put a vertical drive engine with a belt and everything. And I really think all in all, you would have a better in between, with something that's supposed to be a garden tractor, on a 580 if it had an X700 frame. I really think they should have had, a more substantial frame. But that's really all. The weight, that's what I was getting into with this. The weight for the X580, like, it's got weight, but there again, I don't think it had quite enough weight. Like, going from the 100 series like I did to the 500, you could definitely feel a difference in weight. However, you get bouncing on some rough ground or anything, you could almost kind of feel the frame like flexing a little bit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But you know, to go up, you know, to that high level of a lawn tractor, garden tractor, it was definitely not what I was, you know, expecting it should be or feeling it should be. And that's really gonna wrap up my cons. Like I said, sleeve hitch. That's like the only real downfall that I saw to that thing. That's the only thing I wasn't a fan of, and that's really, even though that's one thing, like that's pretty much the reason that I ended up trading it, because I wanted it to be able to do that ground engaging work. You know, even though I don't have much to do, it just, I wanted to have something that I could actually do that with, because I plan on keeping this thing, you know, for a very long time, and you know, doing stuff on whatever other properties I may come into. So we'll see. So now I'm going to get into the pros. The pros, first one, transaxle. So the K72 seems like a great transaxle. The only thing I really didn't like about it was filling the hydraulic fluid. The fill point for it was in an awkward spot. It's hard to get a funnel in there. Pretty much had to use a little vinyl hose, and then even then, like putting in the amounts that are recommended, it ended up overflowing. So that wasn't the most fun, but the transaxle itself was awesome. With that, it has the differential lock, which I thought was going to be a goofy thing. I thought I would never use it. I ended up using it a lot. Especially doing anything ground engaging. You know, you get into a root, or if you're like I was doing my driveway, I get into, you know, loosened gravel, you know, get that box blade filled up with gravel, and then the wheels, you know, just want to spin. So that transaxle has tons of torque, which means it's easy to spin the wheels. And then at the same time, one of those cons, the weight, you know, it is a little bit lighter weight machine. So, there again, you just don't have the weight on the tires to make them stick. So having that diff lock was a huge help, and I think that is a huge selling point for the 500 series, you know, over any of the higher end X300 series. So next be the size overall. So it is a good bit bigger than a 100 series tractor. Something I never really realized is how much bigger the tractors get as you step up. You know, I thought they'd all be about the size of the 100 series, just with, you know, maybe some bigger wheels, bigger tires. But then in reality, like I brought that 500 home, and well, even at the dealer, saw it sitting when I went to pick it up, saw it sitting next to some 300 series and a couple 100 series, and I was like, oh my God, like that thing is huge. You know, obviously it's not big ag, you know, tractor size, but you know, it's big compared to what you normally see. You know, you're used to going to Lowe's or Home Depot and you see, you know, the lawn tractor sitting out front, and you know, that's what you expect when you hear, you know, oh, you know, so-and-so got a lawn tractor. Well, when you hear they get, you know, a 500 or a 700, you know, people are thinking, oh, just little, and then they see it and they're like, oh man, that's, you know, that's a good sized tractor. So it is bigger. That being said, it is similar in size to a 300 series. You do have bigger rear wheels, you have that bigger transaxle, but you know, it is a good sized tractor. And the thing with it too is it's not as big as a 700 series. So you can have a pretty beefy tractor without having one that's that big. You stick to that like 300 size. So it is fairly narrow. If you look at it from the back, the frame is fairly narrow, and then the wheels are real wide, but they don't like stick out wide or anything. So you keep more of a narrow track with it, but you still have all the beef of a bigger tractor. So I thought the size was really cool. Though now having a 700, you know, I can't say I don't like the size of the 700. Next is weight attachment. So that actually is really cool, because without having to add anything, you can hook, you know, 4 weights on the back of it. You know, the 700 series, you can't do that. You have to get the click and go mount, or you have to get a 3-point and, you know, stick something on it, or build a weight bracket like I did. And then also the 580, the 584, and the 590 all come with the front weight bracket, which is an option, I guess, for the 570s. And then I would imagine it's an option that you can get for the 300 series. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. But it's cool that comes with it, and you have the options for front or rear. So, you know, having those brackets there that'll accept those weights, you know, is something that you won't have to purchase later on. So I already talked about diff lock. You know, the diff lock is great. It worked flawlessly for me as much as I used it. I would definitely, you know, consider that, depending, you know, if you have any kind of terrain, if you think you may ever have to cut in a wet, you know, a wet type of condition, you know, that diff lock, you know, is really worth it in my opinion. Tires. So the 580 comes with the bigger set of tires. Um, they're 24-inch tires. You know, that's bigger than what you're gonna normally get on the 300s, I believe. They may go to like 23 and a half. I don't know, maybe 24s, but I don't know. They seem a lot bigger on the 500 series. But they are the H-Daps. You're not going to find H-Daps in the X300 series, but those H-Dap tires are really good. I was worried a little bit about how they would be on the yard, but I had zero issues with them at all. You know, ripping grass up or anything. You know, I could be in the tightest turn and it did not damage my yard at all. I was really surprised. They did really well. They did well in all conditions, really. With the exception of snow, I didn't use that machine for any kind of snow removal. The X700 here is, but I also got ag tires for that. But I have heard a lot and seen a lot that the regular H-Dap tires do really well. I did plow once with the H-Dap tires and it did do well on it. But yeah, I think, you know, having H-Daps over just a standard turf tire, you're not really hurting anything, but you have a ton to gain with them. So I think that's a definite sell point that they come with those and you won't have to track them down. Next is engine. So I really like the engine on the X580 for a couple reasons. One, it's carbureted, so you know you don't have to worry about extra electronics going bad on it. If you need to rebuild a carburetor, you can rebuild a carburetor. Carburetors aren't that hard to rebuild on small engines like this. And I mean, yes, it is a pain having to do it, and you know you could get, you know, into, you know, surging engines, stuff like that. But you know, if you take care of your machine and you're buying it new or even used a couple years old, like it's not going to be that much of a problem. It's not like, you know, when you buy something that's, you know, 10, 15 years old, you know, and it's surging a little bit. Like the D105 I had, that eventually started surging, and I got that mostly ironed out, you know, cleaning out the carburetor and everything, rebuilding it. But I do like that as opposed to having to replace anything, you know, with fuel injectors or anything like that. I'm not sure exactly what all's entailed in the 590s and their fuel injection system, which is cool. I mean, if that's the thing you're into, you like that EFI type stuff, cool. But the simplicity of, you know, a carbureted engine sometimes is nice. And then also, to go along with that, it is air cooled, not water cooled. So the problems I had with four-wheelers in the past, they were always leaking with something to do with the water pump, whether it be oil, you know, coming past or something, or in my experience, it was always, I was getting coolant, you know, seeping out of wheat poles, or, you know, the, whatever the drain tube is. I don't know. It was just always really annoying, and I would get them replaced, luckily under warranty, and they would leak again, and it was just a nightmare. So being able to buy a garden tractor that was air cooled, like, that was a really big thing for me. So I like that, because there again, it's one less thing that can really go wrong. But at the same time, they still had really good power out of that engine. It was a 24 horse or 24 and a half horse engine, which was plenty of power. And to be able to run even that 54-inch deck, like, that was awesome. It ran that deck no problem. It cut through very tall grass. I have a video out there of it cutting an overgrown yard. It did really well. So I definitely liked that Kawasaki engine that they had in there. It was a good pick. There again, if I could build a dream X580, you know, it would be on that 700 frame, but probably with that engine. And then some other niceties that it had, you know, the high back seat on the newer ones, it was really cool. I found myself not really like leaning back in it to take full advantage of the high back seat, but I definitely noticed that I had a little bit more support, you know, than I did on just the little low back seat that comes on the 100 series tractors. So it is nice. The armrest kit for it was really nice. So that's just one of those things, like, obviously, like, to use it, you got to sit in it. So like you spend a lot of time in that seat. Like, you want to have a decent seat. But it was really comfortable. The embroidery on it was nice. You know, just a nice little touch. So nothing but good things from the seat. It didn't seem like the cheap vinyl like you would find on the lower models. It actually seemed, you know, it was stitched and everything. Like, it was a nice seat. The Excel Deep deck, as I said already, you know, with the engine, the Excel Deep deck cut really well. It had some features that I already see that I kind of like over the 54 high capacity deck that I have with the 700 series. The fact that you could roll the deck out from under the tractor was cool. Now, yes, if you don't have a floor jack, it is kind of challenging to kind of get it, you know, out from under there, because the front wheels sit back a little further. So you got to like turn them, pull it, turn them the other way, pull it out. It's a little bit of a pain. It's way easier to jack it up with a floor jack, you know, the front of the tractor, and then pull it out. But the fact that you could lock those gauge wheels into different positions so that you could roll it around depending on how you want, that was cool. The 700 series high capacity decks don't have that, and I don't really like that much. But yeah, the deck, you know, it was nice. It had some weight to it, a lot more weight than the 100 series decks do. Not quite as much as what the 700 series high capacity deck does, but you know, overall, that Excel Deep deck, really nice. So I think even if you're looking at the different tractors and, you know, you see that there's the 200 series and you're thinking, okay, that's just, you know, another version of a 100 series, it's not. You know, I think it's the S240 has an Excel Deep deck. And I think if you're going to spend the money on, you know, if you think you would spend the money on a higher end S100 series tractor, like the 170 or the 180, you might as well go up to the 240 and get one with the Excel Deep deck, because it's the same price. Last thing, that this is going to sound really stupid because most people hate it, but the other pro that I found on it was actually the Rio button, the reverse implement option button. So that's the safety that you actually need to push in order to mow in reverse with the PTO engaged, you know, on the 580 or any of the tractors for that matter. On my 105, I bypassed it. I made just a simple little jumper wire, so it was removable. You know, when I got rid of it, I re-engaged that safety system. I didn't want to sell it, you know, with that disengaged. But I never used it on that tractor. It was a pain in the butt because you already had to shift it from forward to reverse, and then that was just an extra step in order to mow in reverse, and I didn't like it. Now, the 580 having, you know, the twin touch hydrostatic transmission, you don't need to switch forward and reverse. So it wasn't much for me to just, you know, let off the forward pedal, hit the Rio, go in reverse, let off, and it was good to go. It was super easy to get used to that, and I did. But also that button itself on the 580 was bigger. It was like a bigger, you know, rectangular square shaped, you know, button, not just a little tiny round button. So the 700 actually has one that was just like the one on the the 100 series that I had, and I don't like it on this one now. So I haven't, of course, used it because I just got that. There's still feet of snow on the ground here in Alaska at the time of making this. But it's the same exact design. So it's small. Hopefully I can hit it easier. It was easy to see and hit the one on the 580 because it was big, you know, big yellow button. On this one, it's just small. So that is one thing, you know, if, you know, ergonomics, if you will, is your priority, then the 500, and I'm sure the 300 series is the same too. For that button specifically, you know, if safety's your thing, you know, that is something nice about that model. So that is it for my pros and cons list, really. I mean, you know, people do reviews about these things. You know, you can look up reviews and see a bunch of the different options. This is just my opinion of some of the things I really liked and disliked. I will add the steering, the hydraulic steering. I thought at first that was going to be really goofy and it was going to be something else to go wrong. Well, I ended up not having any issues with it the time that I had the tractor. and I ended up loving it. You know, you could put any amount of weight on the front of that thing. I put 4 weights on the front, and it didn't steer any different. It felt like there was no weight on the front end of that tractor. It was a really nice setup, a really nice design. So I would definitely recommend, if you're getting something like this, skip the 570, go to the 580, get that hydraulic steering, because I guarantee you will love it. So now I want to go into a little bit of the conversation that I've been having with this person, you know, that was looking for, you know, my opinion and some information on, you know, the 580 and, you know, what I think may be best for their yard. So essentially they have, you know, some hills, they've mowed in some more wet conditions, apparently some ditches, stuff like that. So, you know, they were using a 0-turn mower, and they were having, you know, a lot of wheel slippage, you know, having to pull it out, you know, get stuck, whatever. So they're looking for something a little different, thinking a tractor would, you know, solve the problem. So I was thinking about it, and, you know, my first thought was, well, it may not actually be the mower that's the problem, it may be tires. So, you know, I mentioned how H-daps are a good thing, and, you know, the 580, you know, has the H-daps, so I figured, you know, that would be a good choice. But also, you know, they were kind of set like on the X300 series. I think the X380 to be specific. And they just wanted to know my opinion. So I sat down, typed a bunch out here, and I ended up found myself kind of like pushing the X580, just due to the fact that it's really not all that more expensive. I mean, it definitely is, but all the extra that you get with it, like, you know, I think it's like somewhere in the ballpark of like 3,000 more, which, yes, it's a lot. But think about it. If you gotta get that and then you want to put H-dap tires on it, you know, you have an expense there. There's the beefier transaxle that, you know, people will agree is capable of ground engaging work. You know, you get that. The X380 didn't look like it had hydraulic steering. I think I looked it up. I don't believe it did. So you get the hydraulic steering. You know, you get a more powerful motor. There's really just a lot more that you do get that you can, you know, justify that extra money. And then with that, you get a longer warranty. So, you know, there's a lot really that goes into it. But I don't know. I don't want to just read this whole conversation. There's a lot of comparisons about stuff we've already talked about, weight and stuff like that. You know, size of tractors. But essentially, I wanted to touch on, like, if you're looking at buying, you know, a 580 or anything like this, one thing that I pointed out to him is, you know, when you look at other brands and try to find a tractor that is similar in specs, you know, you can easily kind of justify like why the 580 costs what it does, and why, you know, it might be worth it to just go ahead and get that one. Now, you know, I don't speak for John Deere specifically. You know, I don't work for them or anything. I mean, I use them, so I am a little bit biased, but at the same time, I wanted to give this guy like an honest account and like show him some actual numbers, you know, price wise, and just, you know, some of the simple specs of others. So I'm going to run through a few of them here. The first that is probably a big competitor that a lot of people probably have experience with or may see around, is going to be the Husqvarna TS354XD. So for me, that one blurs the line between the 300 and the 500 series a little bit, and its MSRP is only $44.99. So, you know, significantly less than the 500 series and mid-range for the X300 series. It does have, you know, a bolted rear wheel, so that's something you see, you know, for a garden tractor. Like, that's kind of one of the things it needs to have, to be identified as a garden tractor. It has a larger engine, but it is the Kawasaki FR line, whereas the 580, you know, they have the FS line. So you have, you know, a better quality engine, you know, in the 500 series. The transaxle, I want to say, is the K66 on that one. So it's better than the 300 series. The biggest of the 300s have the K58, but the 580, you know, has the K72. So you're in between there. However, there is an electric locker on it, which I'm not a fan of electric really. I would much rather have that actual, you know, button that's actually actuating a lever. So a locker system, I would say, would be better on the 580, but this, you know, does have a locker, so, you know, we'll give it that. The frame, to me, just like looking at pictures and whatnot, seems like it's probably less than a 300. You can't see a whole lot of frame hanging down underneath where the fender deck, fender panel, whatever you want to call it, is, and it just looks kind of flat, you know, throughout the center, like where your feet and everything would go. It kind of reminds me of what the 100 series looks like, so I honestly am not really sure how robust the frame on those is. In the tractor, you know, as a whole, it just doesn't seem as nice. I've seen them. There is a dealer local to me, and, you know, I've seen them there. It just, you know, granted, I didn't like open the hood and, you know, look around at hardcore. You know, I'm walking by them and just kind of getting a quick impression. It just didn't look quite as nice. But you can't argue that price, you know, if the transaxle is what you're really looking at, you know, and the fact that it has a locker, like, that one is good, but I don't think you can really compare it to the 500. Next is going to be the Kubota T2290 KWT, and I just chose the Dash 48. The 48 is just because of the deck size. There's different deck sizes you can get, but that one retails for $55.99. It does have a smaller engine, and I don't have all the specs right in front of me, but, you know, I was looking at all this stuff when I was emailing this guy, so I can say that it does have a smaller engine than the 500. The transaxle that they use is not a tough torque, so I really can't compare that. But there is no locker in it, so there again, like, it's not really, to me, any greater than a 300 series. And I even said here, you know, I'd put it at a low-end 300 series at best. Excuse me. But it costs like what the higher-end 500s do, so I don't know what's going on there. As for the Kubota, that's like the higher end of their lower end tractors. It seemed like they have two different lines. They have those, like, the T22 or whatever line, and then they also have like I think it's a GR line or something, and the GRs are a bit different. Those ones have the diesel engines and everything, so they're definitely more. Third one I talked to him about was the Simplicity Conquest. This is, I think, out of 4 different models Simplicity offers, this is the third one. It looks close to the 500 series, but there again, it only has a K66, similar to the Husqvarna. The engine is slightly bigger, so it's 25 horse. Now granted, you can get, I think, 25 horse or 25 and a half or something if you get a 590. Excuse me. And it is a Briggs commercial engine, not a Kawasaki. So I know some people really hate Briggs for whatever reason. I can't say I'm against them. But it is a commercial line, so hey, maybe it's better than what you would find in a lot of the, you know, John Deere 100 series, maybe, I don't know, Craftsman's, whatever you would find at the box stores. And then the problem with the Simplicity is, though, it starts at $93.49. So, you know, you're at, I think that's somewhere around the X590 price, and there again, you're not really getting anything greater than a 590. It all is probably at or lower than what a 590 is. So that's those 3. And then the last one, and this would be my pick if I was, you know, not gonna specifically buy a Deere, but wanted something as close as I could get to the 500. My last one that I went through here was the Cub Cadet XT3 GSX. It is a big tractor. You know, you look at pictures of it, you see people riding them, you know, the thing looks like a monster. It is a 25 horse motor. They don't use tough torque axles. I don't know if they use their proprietary ones. I know Cub Cadet kind of does some stuff different. I think a lot of their tractors actually may be shaft driven to an extent. Don't quote me on that. Not an expert. But their differential is locking, so that's good. And let's see here. Yeah, and the drawback, like all these tractors, one of the things that the 580 has, that I talked about, was the H-DAP tires. None of these other tractors come standard with H-DAP tires. So there again, that's something else you're gonna have to buy. And then the Cub Cadet is priced at $60.99 currently. All of these, that's the price, the MSRP at the making of this video. So a pretty good middle ground, on the price. I think that one's probably gonna be the closest you could really get. But there again, without knowing, all the specs of the axle or having really any experience with, those models of transaxles, I don't know how good they really are. But yeah, end of the day, like you see all that, you go look it all up for yourself. You compare all the prices and everything, put it all side by side. At the end of the day, the fact that you're getting more out of the John Deere X580 than any of these others, it kind of makes it worth the price. It's not like just because it has that name, it's being sold for a ton more. I can kind of relate this to the four-wheeler world. Like, everybody thinks Can-Ams are super expensive, but when you look at what you get in a Can-Am compared to, Yamaha, Kawasaki, name your other brand, they're really not that bad. So don't just think, oh, it's a John Deere, it's going to be super expensive and not worth it. Like, believe me, it is worth it. Like, the build quality is there. And, as you can see, comparing it to the highest models that other brands have, you're not even at the highest end model of John Deere's here, but compared to the highest models of other brands, I think Simplicity and Kubota maybe are the only ones that would have something better than a 580. But they cost significantly more. Excuse me. And there again, you can just go up to a 700 and, have greater specs than all those other brands too. So don't put Deere past you just because, of the name and just assuming they're going to be more expensive, because I really don't think they are. I think for what you get, it's good value. For the warranty you get, it's good value. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Of course, if you ever want any more of my opinion or anything, for what it's worth, feel free, email me, leave comments or whatever. I love responding to comments. I love responding to emails. I'll talk, whatever. I'll listen to feedback, whatever it may be. But I hope, if you're looking for something like this, if you're looking to buy one of these, I know, spring's coming, summer's coming, people are going to be looking to, maybe upgrade, or you just bought a big property and you want something bigger like this to mow with. I hope this helps. I hope this kind of, sways your opinion maybe, to it. Maybe, hey, I didn't think this was going to be the greatest option, because I could spend less and get the same thing somewhere else, but now maybe you see you can't. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. But at the end of the day, I think I would definitely give like 4 3/4 stars out of 5 to the X580. I mean, realistically, it is a great mower. I will stand up for it any day. Honestly, I wish I could have kept mine. I wish I could go buy it back right now or something. But really, that sleeve hitch is my only drawback. So I think if you get one, maybe don't go for the sleeve hitch. If you're doing some stuff like plowing a garden, I'm sure it's fine, because that plow is going to pull itself into the ground and you'll be all right. But if you're doing ground engaging work where it's setting on the ground, like using that box blade, I wouldn't recommend it. I think if you're really going to be doing anything like that, move it up. But that's one thing I learned at this point, that I'm always going to recommend to people that ask me what kind of mower I think they should get for their situation. I'm always going to tell you, buy one series up from what you think you need. So if you think you'll be good with a 100, at least look at the 200 series, mainly because of price and then what you get. Like I said earlier, an S180 costs the same as an S240, but you're getting a better engine, you're getting a better mower deck, same transaxle and everything, but regardless, you're getting better parts. And then, if you think you could go with a 300, a low-end 300, just go up to the higher end 300s if you can. There's a better transaxle. If you think, you know, a 300 will do it for you, you may want to just go to the 500 anyway. If you ever thought, oh man, you know, maybe I should move up to that next one, and then no, I won't. I think at the end of the day, if you get whatever the lower one is, you're gonna find yourself wanting the bigger one. So you might as well just go get the big one off the bat. Buy once, cry once. That's pretty much the philosophy that I wish I would have had when I was getting these. You know, I had the 580 for a year, ended up trading it up a year later. You know, I was dumb on my part. You know, maybe I should have just tried to get the other one first. But hey, it is what it is. I'm happy now. But I really think, you know, you should consider always moving up a level, just because, you know, you never know what you may run into or find that you need to do that it might help you to have that little bit bigger of a tractor. So, of course, any questions or anything, please feel free, ask them, email me, whatever you got to do. I'd love to respond. So at that, thanks for watching. Have a good one.